Hi everyone, welcome and thank you for joining us today. My name is Jean, a digital events manager at Connecting Up and TechSoup New Zealand. We are part of the Info Exchange Group, a not-for-profit social enterprise that tackles the biggest social challenges by creating use of technology. Now I'm very excited to welcome you to join today for the sections Ignite Your Productivity with Microsoft Power Automate with Conor Daly and Lucy Rees from IT team. Conor is the general manager of IT team, a New Zealand-based born-in-the-cloud managed service provider. Over the last 8 years, Conor and his team have worked alongside with many commercial and not-for-profit organizations, supporting them in their migration to cloud and their adoptions to Office 365 suites of technologies. And also, as you can see, we are also having Lucy Rees today. She's our service delivery lead with IT team for almost 8 years. While she has nominated a large number of roles within the company, currently she manages the engineering team as well as oversight their service teams. Through this, she has had to become the expert internally for most of our key systems and has been involved in crafting of almost all of the processes related to delivery and HR. And now she has become very proficient with Power Automate, Forms, and much of the Microsoft suite. Before we begin, we'll start with a bit of housekeeping. All lines are muted. If you have any technical issues, I'm here to help. Just type into the questions box. And also, I believe you'll have many questions during the webinars. Please also type into the questions box, and Conor and Lucy will get them answered by the end. We really encourage you to ask as many questions as possible. Please make it very interactive. No question is silly. And please note that your questions will not be appear to the entire group. And now the webinar is being recorded. A link to the recording and the slides will be sent to you in 1 to 2 business days. And also there's a very short survey at the end. Please help us to complete that for an even better experience. All right, now I'll pass on to Conor and Lucy for today's section. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jean.
Thanks, Jean.
Sorry, wrong side. Just make sure the microphone's right place. Thank you for joining us, everyone. This here is a kind of a, I'm not sure if we call it a passion topic, but it's certainly a topic or tool that we are very positive about and at least somewhat passionate about, which is Power Automate. Now, we have done webinars on this topic before, at least one webinar and perhaps one workshop, but going back at 2 years now, I think was the time. So things have changed, and if you did attend that one, I imagine a bit of a refresher will be very positive as well. But we're going to find out a bit more in the polls. Yeah, thank you, Jean, for the introduction. My name's Conan. I'll kind of be taking you through the outside of this, and then Lucy's going to be delving into the bones of it. She's really the expert. I've done very little building of Power Automate. I'm mainly a user, but obviously I know a little bit about the topic. And then I'll talk about some of the training elements. Now, Jean, can we kick off with the polls that we had in there, please?
No worries. So let me share the first poll. All right, it's up there. Can you see that?
Yeah, I can. I can even fill it in. Oh, no, I can't actually. No, it's not true. Yes, are you running Microsoft 365? Kind of yeah, it's an easy question, but say you're not sure if you're not sure because you might just be running off the software, but yeah, please, if you can answer that, that'd be great.
All right, so we have about 80% voted. Let's wait for a few seconds. Okay, so all voted, and let me share the result.
Well, there we go.
Wonderful.
It's great. No one even took the bait of the fourth answer. That's excellent. So everyone is running 365. Great. I think the most recent webinar that we did, we kind of had a similar answer. Now, if you go back 2 years, it wasn't that wasn't the answer that we would get. It was far more broad. There's a lot of people that still hadn't delved into it. So this is great. Next poll, Jean.
So, would you like me to share the next one?
Oh, sorry, excuse me. Yes, next poll, Jean. Pardon me.
Yeah, of course. Here you go.
There might be an issue with this poll answer. So let's just, we might not be able to use this one. Oh, I'll tell you what is your experience with Power Automate? I'll tell you what, tick the top one if you have used Power Automate before, and tick the second one if you have no experience with Power Automate. There are a few more there, but I don't want this to get too complicated. So yeah, sorry, a little bit of a technical issue there, having the same answer.
Yep, sorry about that. Yeah, maybe just yes and no. The first one is yes, the second one is no.
Yes, let's see how this goes.
All right, so looks like all of us have voted. Let's share the results.
Yeah, well, it looks like, assuming these have kept the same path, it would appear that the slight majority have not used Power Automate before. And that's great. That means there's, this is an introductory webinar. So, it is tailored towards that, but I'm hoping the people that have are using Power Automate in some way, shape or form can get something out of it, even if it's ideas or you can ask a question that might help us develop your capability. And the next one. Next poll, G. Have you used Forms, that's 365 Microsoft Forms, before?
All right, so let me share the result.
Look at that. Okay, that's a good mix. So some as a user, not the majority, or at least the most significant answer is yes, you've created some, and some have never created them, which is great. Now, Forms does go hand in hand quite well with Power Automate. Cool. And go for the next one, Jean, when you're ready.
Yep.
Just a couple more, guys. It's helping us to understand the audience. Do you have processes that are paper-based at present? Doesn't mean do you use paper only in your organization, but I guess a process that is followed frequently that is paper-based.
Okay, a few more seconds. Okay, all done. Thank you.
Excellent. Yes. The majority of the people have yes as the answer, which is great. As in, a lot of what Power Automate does is trying to take processes that are paper-based and convert them online. So there could be some opportunity, in particular, there's some opportunity for those people. And the last poll, thank you for bearing with us, audience. What is your motivation to automate? I could have had a none of the above. Maybe the bottom one is none of the above. Or all of the above.
All right. Here you go.
Here we go. Look at that. Speed up pretty clear. Damn the environment. Speed up processes and ensure processes are followed. And we agree. Like ultimately, the environmental aspect is a bonus. So great. That's excellent. Let's continue. So what are we going to cover? We're going to talk briefly about the Power Platform, which is really probably just trying to explain what it is and what's in it so that there's no confusion. Now we're going to outline Power Automate, how it works, what it is, how it works, and why. The processes that you can automate, we're going to go through several examples and talk about some of the common ones. And that's based on our experience and a little bit of our experience with customers. And then what's not detailed here is we're going to talk about, give some ideas for training or at least and demonstrate a tool that we are using with our customers for training, which could be beneficial. So a little bit about us just to start off with. So been around for for over 10 years now. 365 is a big part of us. We provide support to customers, but wide range of IT services, including consulting. Not-for-profits are our main customer base, and we provide IT services to New Zealand and Australian organisations. Continue. Don't like to spend too much time on that. So what is the Power Platform? So Power Platform, or Microsoft's Power Suite, as they like to call it. They duck and dive between these terminologies. So there's Power BI, Power Apps, and Power Automate. And then there's this other one, Power Virtual Apps as well, which is this new one, or Virtual something. But Power BI, you may have heard of Power BI. It's a big and majorly growing tool set that Microsoft promotes. It's got a lot more brand awareness than Power Automate. So it's business intelligence, data visualization, and reporting. It is very cool. Why you would use Power BI? It can be something that requires, it's not hard to get started with. It's just kind of hard to get deep with. But basically, if you've got a lot of data and spreadsheets at various places, you can import that into Power BI and I guess play with it and get good visuals, which can be very powerful when you're in meetings and you're trying to show your fundraiser numbers or your client numbers or interactions or that kind of thing in a way that is not just a spreadsheet. So that's commonly why it's used. And when you see people using it, when people get very proficient with it, it is quite impressive because they're almost it kind of can drive a meeting. Because if someone asks a question, oh, hold on, what about the top 5 customers? And then they click a few buttons and then you inflate the top 5 customers. And so it's very good at interpretation and visualizing data. Power Apps is really about building custom apps to integrate with Power BI and also the other Microsoft technologies like Dynamics and that kind of thing. But it's a suite of apps, connectors and that kind of thing that allow integration. And then Power Automate is what we're going to talk about a little bit more. Instead of spoiling, we've got a slide coming up, but basically Power Automate is about automating processes. So why should you do this? Kind of spoiled this with the poll, but there is an environmental element to this, Although I know there's a lot of paper trees in Australia, it is about sort of saving paper and the moving of paper and the filing and whatever else that we're doing with it, burning, I guess. Improving and accelerating processes. This is the big one. Trying to make it more efficient to I guess, not only have the speed of your tasks, like say entering a timesheet and getting that approved, or entering a purchase order and getting that approved, but having it documented, or sorry, having the paper trail clear, as in keeping tight records, and just having it fast and being a very clear process. We used to find with paper, it's ripe for failures, I guess. It allows you to, considering going down this path, it allows you to change and add to processes very easily, because you don't need to tell someone that it's now going to go a certain place. You just change the direction. And it's obviously very good for lockdowns. Now, I know that, if we broached this in 2020, it was kind of everyone was figuring out lockdowns and how to do it. But now some form of remote working or dispersed operation is very common, and having paper-based processes in the office is not ideal. And if you're writing something down, signing it and taking a photo and emailing it, you want to try and get rid of that. Next slide. So some processes that are commonly paper-based. And these are some of these we're going to touch on. So timesheets, purchase requests, expense claims, 2 different things. Credit card requests, like I want to make a purchase with a credit card. Health and safety incidents, travel requests, new client forms of some kind, or staff induction. So we're not saying that you can get rid of paper entirely, but it's really if they're part of a process that is, paper-based, someone fills it out, someone sends it somewhere, can we eliminate that? So what is Power Automate? So it's part of Microsoft. It's a Microsoft product tool. It's part of 365. You need to be using 365 to access it, or even 365 or Office 365. Part of the Power Platform. Importantly, it was called Flow, and you will find remnants of that terminology, even in the training platform we're going to show a little bit later. And they call them flows. So we probably, what do you think, Lucy? Do you prefer Flow or Power Automate?
Flow's a lot easier. I'm pretty sure the URL is still flow.microsoft.com as well, so they've not quite caught up with themselves.
Yeah, I think it was to try and bring it into the Power Automate and get the brand up of this product. So it is not just for organizations, but it's for individuals. But we're going to lean into the organization side here. That's what we're here for. It's low code or no code, and there are many templates available. Now, what I'm not explaining here is Power Automate is about automating steps on a process for the flow of information. So flow, funnily enough. So ultimately, it's kind of, the interesting thing is what you would have done in the past, right? So 5 years ago, before this came out, if you wanted to have, what Power Automate replaces is someone building an application, a mini application inside your organization to do something. So you don't have to get someone to build something or a programmer to design something, it just happens. So Power Automate, yeah, is there another way that you describe it, Lucy?
I think when we get into the examples, that'll kind of shape out. I guess you throw all this information out. The opportunities of things you can do with it are absolutely endless. It makes the most sense when you kind of see in real life how some people are using it and kind of get your head around what that means for you.
Yeah, the piece of text that's missing in these points is it's an automation tool. It's a tool for automating processes. That's pretty much what it is. It's in the title. All right, next slide.
So this is just a wee sneak peek at what the actual application is. So it's a web-based app, Power Automate. Like I said, it's flow.microsoft.com if you want to go to it. And this is what you'll get shown when you first open up that website. If you're logged into Microsoft 365, you'll see on the left-hand side, you've got a few different places you can go to. My Flows will show you anything that you've got active that you've set up. So if you're starting to play around, you'll see things in there. You can create new ones. There's the template section. What it does though, that the first time you open this, you'll see on the front there, it says, hey, what do you want to automate? And it gives you some ideas and some templates straight away. So from the very get-go, from opening up this website and the space of 2 or 3 minutes, you could have one of these pre-made templates up and running essentially if you click on them. If you scroll down a little bit as well on that front page, it takes you through learning. So it straight away can connect you through to some of the Microsoft learning modules as well. Connor's going to touch on some other learning options later on, but there's an hour-long course that's all about getting started with Power Automate. There's more complex. We're not going to dive into the too complex stuff here, but you can jump in, do a couple of our module on sort of more intermediate flow type processes there. So it's really powerful. And then obviously all the way go-tos to things like pricing. If you're setting something up that might involve cost, most of them won't. The community forums for this are huge. As you'll sort of pick up today, the opportunities with this are absolutely endless and very customized for each organization. So the community forum is quite a fascinating place to be to hear how people are using it as well. This is what an actual flow looks like. So the tool's called Power Automate. They've still called the actual things that you build inside of it flow. So, it's quite, the UI is really nice. It's very user friendly, but this is what, if you build a flow, this is what it's going to look like. Each of those boxes represents an action. So this one here, for example, it's got its wee trigger at the top that is a form. So when a form response is submitted, it's then going to go ahead and do each of those little steps underneath it. So it's going to go away and get the details of what was submitted. It's going to get a bit more information about the user that submitted that as well, which helps making sort of some of the next steps even more custom. It's going to send an email. It's going to start an approval, and then it's got a wee condition there. So depending on the approval status, it's going to do a couple of other things. When you're in editing your flows, you click on one of these, you'll be able to see the nitty gritty where you sort of do all the settings and things. But this is essentially what a flow looks like. So how does a flow start? There's a few different ways. Triggers are what we largely use. So a trigger could be a whole bunch of different things. An email being received can start a flow, a form being filled out. That's what we're going to talk about a lot today. A document being uploaded to SharePoint, a tweet mentioning your organization. There are all sorts of little tools that pop into it. So you can get quite creative. There's also button-based flows. We're not going to delve into them today, but essentially there's a mobile app for flow as well, and you can sort of set yourself buttons. So if you click on that, it'll go off and do a bunch of things. And then schedules as well, so you can set some of these things up to run, once a week at a specific time, depending on what sort of use cases you've got in your organization as well. So pretty powerful. But yeah, we'll be mainly focusing on the forms side of things today. Speaking of Microsoft Forms, it sounds like most of you, based on the poll, are familiar with actually making these forms, which is fantastic because that's sort of the half of what you're doing here. For those of you that haven't, it's part of your 365 subscription. You'll be able to find it in your little app drawer online as well. And it's essentially just very easy to make little templates for things that you can send out to your team, things you can share externally to collect information. So very customizable. You can go as far as having people upload documents in there, taking photos, putting ratings on a scale, all sorts of things. So it's pretty powerful.
And yeah, I mean, for forms, it's probably the easiest, most accessible tool in the Microsoft sort of system, except for Word. And we use it quite extensively for things like getting feedback from customers. And just using forms without Power Automate is quite good. It just works. You just get the information in a spreadsheet. But just to give you an example, let's give them some good examples, but you could have it so that if there was a certain answer that you were concerned about, like feedback that was negative, it could then go away and do something with that, and something quite intelligent. It could not only just send an email to someone, but it could send an email to a particular person based on data that Power Automate would get. So there's, that's an example of the types of things you could do with forms. All right.
The useful thing about forms as well is once you've gotten your team used to using them, it's really easy just to sort of either implement new processes or change existing ones to use that same format as well. And we'll sort of demo how we've sneakily done that a wee bit to help with compliance in certain processes.
Yep.
So delving into some examples, first one we're going to talk through today is our internal purchases process. So this is a process we have in place for if anyone on the team wants to purchase anything for internal use or on the company credit card. So we sort of use it for two different purposes there. And that might be, they want to do a lunch shout. It might be they need a new monitor, like the plenty of options there. So we use this pretty frequently. How does it work? So we have details being gathered in a Microsoft form. We then have an approval that kicks off via Microsoft Power Automate. And then once that gets approved, we've got the details automatically sending through to our accounts team. Or if it gets rejected, the person who submitted it will get a wee notification as well. So we're going to be focusing on the end user side of this today. So when we get to the wee little demo videos, I'll show you what that looks like. But what did we used to do here? Conan alluded to this a wee bit at the start, but we were heavily paper-based. We would fill out these sorts of forms by hand, pop it on a manager's desk, and then it would go into the big black hole of the manager's desk, often get lost, buried under a whole bunch of other things. Very difficult for queries to be sort of shared around people. The beauty of the process we're going to show you today is it's very easy to sort of tap other people into the process as well. The end result of that is that staff just wouldn't use the process. We would get rogue credit card charges. We would get things turning up and having expense claims and things instead of people going through the sort of process to start with. So it was a wee bit of a nightmare. And even when the approval did get done on its piece of paper form, that wasn't always filed away. Accounts weren't always notified. So kind of defeated the purpose a wee bit.
It was terrible, to be honest, because the problem with credit cards is they are kind of ripe for fraud as well, which is a bit of an issue, but not that we were concerned about that. It was just that there was always this, thing of there were probably two parts to it. One, why did we purchase this, or did we actually need to purchase this? Did anyone actually approve this? And two, trying to find out who actually said they wanted it, and should it be on charge to customers or whatnot. And then the last one is that a lot of it, sometimes they were recurring, so you'd just keep charging, and you'd be like, well, what happened to this? Do we need this? Now I'd put to the audience, if you don't have a credit card, if you use credit cards in your organization, which I'd assume you do, and you don't have a process for it, maybe you should. And then Power Automate. If you're experiencing something, and most of the time when I'm attending a webinar like this and someone puts something like this to me, I go, oh, we're actually not bad. We're pretty good with that. And I always say that to myself. I'm usually wrong. But I would say, this is an example of, and what we hope that people take away is, hey, yes, we might not be leaking money. We don't have fraud rampant. It's not so bad. But the thing is, can it be better? And actually, can you help your team to know that they have a path so that they don't get stuck when they're trying to do this or don't feel awkward? Not having a process might make people feel that they don't have a path to go for this, and they might use their personal things and then expense it. There might be things like that. So just because it's not causing pain doesn't mean it can't be better. And we think this is kind of an obvious one where even if you don't do a lot of transactions, you can implement it to make sure that when you do them, particularly as a not-for-profit or an NGO that tends to need to track their expenses very well, this could be a good way to put this in early. Sorry, Lucy.
All right. So I'll show you a quick demonstration of how this actually looks for our team. So what they need to do if they want to go ahead and make an internal purchase. So you'll see here, and I'll just pause it on this, but we use SharePoint internally, and we have a page that's set up that is our company forms page. So we've got a few different areas. We've got some forms for purchasing, a bunch of health and safety ones, which we'll go into in a wee bit as well in another demo. But as you can see, each of these is actually tied to a Power Automate. So we've got quite a lot of them in place at the moment, but the one that we're going to look at is this wee internal purchase one here. We do also have all of these links accessible inside of Microsoft Teams, just because our team's in there all day, every day, and it just gives them one less excuse to not use the process.
Yeah.
So this is what Microsoft Forms looks like. So you can have a wee look there. We've got a variety of different questions that we ask. Do you need to use the credit card? Who are we buying from? What are we buying? How much is it? And then we've gone ahead here, we've got different people that need to approve different things. So we actually have the option there to sort of specify, hey, who does this need to go to? You might have one person in your team that owns that function, in which case you'd be able to skip that step out and actually within Power Automate, go ahead and set that up. So that is all that the person sort of wanting to make the request needs to do. That's pretty much the end of their interaction with that process. They've gone ahead, they've submitted that. What they're going to do now is kick that off. They're going to get a wee email. We've got it set up so that when people do submit one of these through, they get an email record sent to them, just so that they sort of remember that they have actually submitted that and they've got all the details there. Now, because I also set myself to be the approver for this, you'll see another wee emails just come through saying, hey, someone has asked to buy some stuff. What do you want to do with it? So we're going to go ahead, click on there, and this is what an approval looks like. Now, pay close attention to what happens here, because it's not normal for an email to be interactive, but that is how they've set these up. You've got the buttons right within that email to approve or reject. You can type information in there with some little extra notes, and then you just go ahead and click submit. And once that's done, you'll notice that the email itself changes, which is fantastic for those of us that might forget whether or not we've actually gone ahead and done this. So I'm going to click submit, and there you go. We've gone ahead and rejected that one, but sad. But it means that if I, as the approver, ever going back through to see, hey, what actually happened with that, I've got the record of that in my emails, which is fantastic. Similarly, the person on the other end is going to get a wee email saying, hey, that's been rejected, sorry, with the details that I've written in there. We've got an extra step after that emails that through to our accounts team. It means that they've already got the record of it. If they need to provide the credit card to the team, they can go ahead and do that as well. And it just means everyone's kept in the loop all along the way there. The other handy thing that has come in probably, I want to say the last 6 months, it's always longer ago than you think, so it's probably been the last year or so, that approvals have also been built in directly to Teams. Now, we still have all of the email sides of communications going on as well, because it means that if people are on the go, they can jump in and have a look at them, and we do have sort of that record in there. But regardless, you don't actually need to set up anything in relation to the integration with Teams. Any approval you kick off via a Power Automation is going to pop up in here as well. So it just gives your team another place that they'll see that information. You'll see that you can see any that you've received. So I've generally, by the looks of that, received 2 or 3 a day, and can just jump in and approve them from there. You can also jump in and see any that you've sent. So if you're someone who tends to be submitting requests for things, you can see a wee track of them, see who they went to, see what the response was, and it just gives you all of that information in one place.
Or if it's pending.
Yes, yeah. Also if it's pending. These ones are all approved because I try and do them pretty quickly when they come through. But if you've got sort of a query out on something, you'll be able to see in there. The other handy thing you can do from that as well is reassign them. So if you get a purchase request or whatever you've set up here, and you go, I don't think I'm the right person to work with that, there's a little reassign button, and you can just kick the flow off to someone else.
And you can do, you might have noticed on the form that we showed earlier that had the person you select to approve. Look, we've been a little bit lazy with that, and it sort of, because we're sort of somewhere between a large organisation and a small organisation. You can intelligently have it go to certain people based on who has submitted it. So you can have it so that if it's kind of in a department, it'll go to the department head or those types of things. So you can do that rather than just have them select it, because technically Lucy could submit the form and select it to herself, and I've do that sometimes, but at least you do the paper trail. The other thing I should say here is, ultimately, this webinar is about Power Automate, but it's about process. The process is always only as good as the organization, I guess, mandating and kind of ensuring the importance of these things. There's a little bit of a thing that happens. So when we do create these forms, right, it can start a little bit creaky, where we say, hey, we've got this new form, we want you to use it, and then some people are still deviating from the process or using the paper form, and then you just constantly, what would tend to happen is we're saying, hey, did you use the form? And then eventually, after I don't know, maybe a couple of months or something like that, depending on how frequently it gets used, it gets to the point where you can say, you didn't use the form. That's a really painful thing you've just done. You've made it very difficult for us. But it does need to be a little bit top down. You need a bit of sort of organizational ownership and champions there. So I would say setting up the form is great. That's the half of it. Confidence in the system, so it being always available and working is important, which is what this will offer. If you've got a process and there's no paper, someone could just say, well, there wasn't any paper. So there wasn't any existing forms ready, so I decided not to. So ultimately, what I'm trying to say is there is a process thing here, and hopefully you in this webinar can kind of understand that you might have already have a process and it's sort of working, but it does require usually a little bit of additional soft pushing as well, rather than just creating it available. Sorry, Lucy, I'll let you continue.
No, you're fine. So sort of examples that we use this structure for, so internal purchases, credit card usage, they're the two biggies. Credit approvals as well, so there's quite a few different sort of finance approvals that you could potentially look at tying into something like this in a similar way. And then things that we've helped some other organisations set up as well, petty cash tracking, sort of expense claims, that sort of thing, ways that you can record receipts and the likes as well. So this particular structure, where it's form to approval to notification, can be replicated in a whole bunch of different ways. So very, very, very powerful and easy to replicate once you've got it set up once. So we did a little bit of maths. We think we've been using this for about 3.5 years. And to be honest, we haven't changed the process that much across the time. It's worked really well for us. And last time we did one of these webinars, probably 1.5 years ago, we thought it had been about 200 hours we've saved, probably around 500 now. From woe to go, this process on average takes about 20 minutes from someone actually filling out the form to the person at the other end approving it and it getting on to wherever it needs to go. So if you think about that compared to tracking down the piece of paper, filling out the piece of paper, figuring out what it was that you were supposed to do, figuring out who you're supposed to give it to, and then that person getting to it, it saves a huge amount of time, and it's very easy to multitask and pop them through as well, because you can, they ping up on your phone, your computer while you're doing it, you see it, you go, cool, that's good to go. It's not good to go, I need more information. It's very easy from the approver's side, just as much as it is from the end user side there as well. So another quick demo. Important notifications overview. So this is a bit of a demo of how we use this in a health and safety environment. So our health and safety team needs to be notified when an incident happens, when there might be a near miss, or there's some potentially hazardous on-site work upcoming as well that we just need to have a record of. This is something that's pretty applicable across other organisations as well. So have a think about how that might fit in for you. Again, how does this one work? So we do kick it off with the Microsoft form again, but there's no approval process that happens after that. Instead, we have a notification, and we make use of Teams for that. So our health and safety team, they're sort of spread around the country, but the way that we're all interacting every day is via Teams. So that's where we find it most useful to have notifications go. We all see it straight away. We get sort of an alert notification, and it means that we can jump on it and sort of do whatever activity we need to do. Very easy to pivot these to meet new scenarios rapidly. We whipped one up for rat test logs earlier in the year when we needed to sort of start keeping tabs on those things. So it's nice to have the process in place, tested, the team familiar with working with it. So Again, what we used to do here, it's going to sound terrible. There wasn't really a process. We'd email if something happened. We might do a phone call to someone if something happened. I think there were paper forms, but I couldn't tell you where they were stored, both before being filled out and after. So there was not really any central record. And again, it meant that items weren't consistently reported, and people were, there wasn't any feedback necessarily going to the health and safety team who needed to be managing that sort of thing. So quick demo again of how this looks. So this is our health and safety and wellness hub, which again is up on SharePoint. We've also got all the forms and teams, so that particularly when our on-site team are around and about, who are the people that probably have the most, dangerous is a bit of an exaggeration, but the most potential for risk in their day-to-day, they can access these while they're out and about. So for this particular one, someone is notifying us that they have a job coming up where they're going to be working at heights. Based on everything that they've written in there, it looks like they think they have everything they need to do to actually complete the work. They're able to minimize their risk. So this is more a notification. We need to know that it's happening in case anything does occur, but based on everything they've filled out here, it doesn't look like there's going to be any sort of intervention that needs to happen. Again, you can set it up so that if they tick, say, yes, I've got concerns about this, it's going to go ahead and do something else, but this one looks fine for now. So this is what it looks like in the team side of things. We have a wee health and safety committee. We've got an on-site work notifications channel in there that this is connected up to. And you'll see here that there is a little note that has popped up that says, hey, a new on-site work checklist has been completed by this person. Review the details, get in touch with them. What we've done with that is we've gone ahead and got all those details flowing into a on-site work register, essentially. So you might have this hooked up to something like your hazard register, or whatever else is applicable for your organisation. And we've just tapped that onto the top of this Teams channel. It's a simple wee spreadsheet. We haven't quite got it into Power BI and looking too snazzy yet, but it's really basic, but it does the job. It adds in the details of what that person submitted into a wee table. We've got some conditional formatting set up there so that if anything's particularly alarming, it flags itself in red, which is nice. But this is all our team now needs to do. That's tracked, it's logged. Anyone in the team can jump in and see if anyone's added any extra notes to it and sort of talk about it in that team. And it's just all kept in one really central, really easy to access place rather than in a folder in an office that not everyone is in all of the time. So we use this for a couple of things. Health and safety notifications is the big one. We have started building it into our security incident process as well. So Conan, I don't know if there've been any examples of this where it's been used sort of on the out of hours and things for that sort of notification, but if there is sort of a significant security alert that happens, the team have got a similar process they follow that again notifies a group.
Yeah, the Tech Notify one does use Power Automate to push to that, so it kind of converts email into a notification that buzzes to their phones, which is quite handy. So yeah, it's used.
Yeah, so you can kind of think about whether there are any particularly critical incidents in your organisation that this sort of quick notification that goes straight to the right people would be particularly useful for, whilst also maintaining a really good track log as well. Now, time off requests, we're just going to have a quick chat about this. Don't have a demo lined up, but it's something that's applicable across pretty much every organisation. And if you don't have a process in place, it can cause a bit of pain for quite a lot of people. But essentially, you're likely to have some need to request for annual leave, sick leave from your manager. What we'd recommend doing here, details collected via a Microsoft form. Notification, we're kicking off an approval through to manager. Now, as Connor mentioned before, if you've kind of got your organization set up really well on Microsoft 365, it'll have that information about who people's managers are and the like. So you can actually make use of that without having to go ahead and specify for every person. If they submit this, it goes to this person. So having that back-end structure set up really helps there. And again, confirmation back so that the person knows if they're allowed to go on a lovely holiday. Again, I don't want to talk about what we used to do here. We used to be paper-based and it was pretty terrible. So, and no one ever filled out their calendar to say they were going on holiday either. So this is the sort of process that can have some quite nice usability improvements for the rest of the team as well if it gets implemented well.
Just so much more pleasant. Like that's the thing. Like, it's probably the part that we're not sort of highlighting is for the team, for your team, it's just so much easier, faster, and and then therefore more accurate. Yeah, sorry, go.
Yeah. So for something like this, grab the info on the form, send all that, but you can get some really smart bits and pieces. If you want to get complicated with this, you can. You can do things like notify through to payroll once it gets approved as well, so they can enter it in your leave system. You can get it to automatically set you out of office. You could get it to send you a reminder a week prior. Hey, you've got leave coming up. Make sure you do these things. What else might you want to do? You could get it to pop a wee post up on Teams to all of your colleagues the day that you're on leave saying, haha, I'm on holiday, with a nice picture. You could kind of, the sky's the limit with that sort of thing then. But the very base level of that at the start would be really easy to set up. And if it's something you don't have a process for already, I imagine you'd get a pretty quick win out of this. Example of what you could do with your wee form, it's the sort of thing that's pretty simple. You need to know when they're going, and that's pretty much it. So like I say, it's one that you could set up without too much complexity to start with. All right, last quick demo we're going to do here is one that's quite different. So this is document approval. So an example of when this might be useful is if you are compiling a board document, you need to get it signed off before it goes to board. If you're doing a sales proposal and the sales manager needs to sign it off, marketing, any of those sorts of things where you need someone to confirm, hey, I've looked at this document, I have approved, I've given the go ahead for you to do what needs to happen next with it. So this is built into SharePoint directly. You don't even need to go into Power Automate to get this set up, which is quite neat. And I think what we'll do actually, we'll just go into the demo because that's the easiest way to explain it. Wee example here. So this is from scratch. This hasn't been set up yet in this example. They're going to go straight to it. If you're in SharePoint, you'll see there's this cunning little automate button that you may have never clicked on. If you do, it's got a request sign off option there by default. Now, the first time you click on it, it's going to ask you to create the flow. Like I said, you don't actually need to go out to Power Automate in order to do this. You can do it all from in here. You can see what it's planning on doing. It's going to let you send an item to others to get their approval. So I'm going to click create. You'll see we've ticked this wee PowerPoint here, so that's the one that we're sending off to approval. It's going to go ahead and get it set up for the first time, and then it's as simple as just saying, hey, who do I need to send this to? We're going to pick Miriam in this example. And then add a note, let them know why you're sending it to them, what you want them to do, and then you're just going to click run. Now, we're familiar by now with what's going to happen after that. Miriam is going to get that email that says, hey, this has been requested. It's going to have a link back to this document, so she's just going to be able to straight away click on it, have a look at all the content, and then within that email go, yep, or no, I don't think that that's quite right. You need to make some changes. Again, she's going to get it in Teams. She'll get it in the mobile app if she's got that set up. So, that was all of what, a minute and a half, I think, getting that going. So it's now been kicked off for approval. Not going to bother showing you what happens to Miriam now because you've all seen that already. She's going to get that email, but keep an eye on this little column here, which is the sign-off status. As soon as you've kicked that off, that column's going to be there. You'll see this one's pending. As soon as Miriam's gone and said, yep, it's going to switch to approved. So, the person who submitted that, Megan in this case, will have had a wee notification saying, hey, Miriam said it's good to go. Nice and easy one. You can, it's a good one to sort of just test out with, cut your teeth on, give it a crack and surprise someone who might not have had an approval before.
So the training, how do you train on this? Well, I've got some tips coming up on kind of how to get started, but there's a couple of different ways you can do training for this. It is very deep. So from my point of view, the biggest things to get started. So the inbuilt Power Automate basic training. I think Lucy in one of the earliest, in one of the first sort of slides she showed, she basically showed the website of Flow or Power Automate, whichever you want to call it, flow.microsoft.com, which basically at the top had basic training, getting started. So this is commonly a good way to get started. YouTube has a ton on this. And then Microsoft has some in-depth stuff beyond that Power Automate basic training. So we've talked earlier about low code, no code. You can get really complicated with this. Lucy goes far beyond. You probably get into sort of moderate territory, would you say, Lucy? Intermediate?
You can't help but get probably a bit curious once you start poking around in it and going, okay, I know it can do this, but could we give this a go? Yeah.
When you're getting a bit fancier, and that's the thing. The way to start this is to find out a process or a form that you've got, get the form, digitize it, get it into Microsoft Forms, and then you start to go, okay, what can I do with this? And then you get it useful, but then you might return to it and go, okay, how can we make this even smarter? And that might be when you start to test the limits of your ability and you need more training. The last point is clip training. Now, we weren't sure if we wanted to show this because this is something that we effectively, market to our customers and sell. So just be aware of that. I'm not trying to hide that, but there are other places you can get it. So clip training is quite a cool tool. Do you want to go to the next slide, Lucy? So this is, we were always searching for how to provide training to our customers. We obviously provide in-person or online one-to-one training with customers and or groups of our customers, but we know there's also just general self-learning or self-taught, whatever, self-guided training. So we found this service called Clip Training. As you can see, it's a very simple, it's reasonably simple technology training tool that it integrates with Teams, but most importantly, it's centered around the 365 technologies. It's not just 365, but that is the center. Do you want to go to the next page, Lucy? So yeah, basically here's Clip Training. I'll quickly show you the My Training. So this just gives you an idea. It's about the individual. You've got active courses down there and a bit of an idea about what's happening, achievements, etc. If we go to the library, I'll just quickly jump to the 365 section, and down here we're just going to go into the Power Automate and Forms sections here today. So there's a lot of other things you can have training on, but we're going to jump into this. So for Forms, as you can see, there's a bunch of lessons. They're very short, 3 minutes to 4 minutes, sometimes 8 minutes, but they're not long training segments. So this is cut into sections, which helps you to understand, to seek what you're actually looking for, but each individual clip is, you can seek out and watch that individual training thing. There's quizzes on each section, but I'm just going to show one quick video, although the problem is you won't be able to hear the sound. So what you would usually hear is, I'm not going to show the full video, what you usually hear is the sound of an American or an Australian giving you a bit of a guide for this content. So it shows you about, this would show you about how to create a simple form and give you the basics of this technology. Then you do a quiz, which luckily enough, I get right on the first guess, but that's not really the big thing. The exam is the big thing. So this is a way that you as an organization can get your staff to learn technologies and be assured that they've actually learnt them. That's the goal, or yourself have actually learnt them. Power Automate's a bit deeper. So there's less, but the videos are a bit longer, as you can see. But this is a really good way to get you moving on Power Automate and, to be honest, 365. So yeah, once again, there's an Australian accent that you won't hear, but this is the technology. This is how we suggest our customers learn if they prefer not to use YouTube or go into the depths of Microsoft's learning system. And there's exams, etc. So yeah, that's really a path for learning or training. Now, how to get started? One thing I'd say is, I talked about it earlier, is get a form, pick a form. If you have time sheets, if you have a system that does your time sheets, that's cool. Commonly that is more and more common. But if you have a time off request or a purchase request, one of the examples we gave, get the bit of paper and work. The first step should be trying to get that into Teams. Get that into Forms, right? You're gonna instantly be in a pretty good position where you're going to receive the information via a spreadsheet, and it's okay. It's not great, but it's okay. But the first step to do would be to go, okay, if you've got one person in the organization that should be receiving those time off requests, or you can make someone, work to get Power Automate to be at least partially involved to get that information to you, and then add the approval process. So I think one way you could do it is you could, ironically enough, use a bit of paper and write down what are the steps you want to do, what's the simple steps, and then, what's more complicated, and just try and get the first step done. So I'd say just start somewhere, just work on getting a form digitized, and then try and get a basic level of Power Automate. I think it can really help. Don't go too complicated straight away, but if you do, then start to look at some training on how you could learn a bit more.
And make
Excellent.
use of the templates as well. Even just when you're on the main
Yeah,
Power Automate site, there's a search bar and just type in sort of a rough outline of what you want to do. And someone might have already done it and set up a template that you can really start building on as well. So they're pretty powerful.
that's right. Thanks, Lucy. So where from here? Start thinking about your processes and then consider the time savings. They will exist. Play around, as we said before. If you struggle or you need some help, feel free to get in touch with us. Download the mobile app, which can really help with approvals as well. Have a look at our blog. It's a little bit dated now, have to admit, but it's dated as in it's not new, but it's the same content. And then go and have a look at flow.microsoft.com. I think now we're on questions. Question time. Do we have any questions, Jean?
Thank you very much, Connor and Lucy. It's very informative. All right, so if you have any questions, please feel free to type into the questions box. And now we are able to help you. All right, please allow me to assign the questions to Connor. We got a questions from Sarah.
Okay.
So the question is, can I use Power Automate with other forms? Our organization uses a form builder called Snap Forms.
That's a great question. Do you know that one,
Possibly
Lucy?
is the answer. So Power Automate itself, last time I looked, I think it had over 400 different apps that it connected with. So forgive me for not knowing 100% if that's one of them. Colin's possibly having a quick Google now. But a lot of external tools external to the Microsoft 365 system will feed into it. Whether or not that one does, I don't know. If they don't currently, you'd hope it would be sort of on the horizon for them, but it's one we'd probably have to have a wee check into. Oh, someone's put a link into
Supposedly,
it.
that was me,
Brilliant.
yeah. I think so. Supposedly it does. I can't speak because I just did a quick Google, but suppose it does. Yeah, as Lucy said, it's built to have all integrate. It's got tons of integrations, so there's a good chance that what you want to use Power Automate for will have some integration.
There are things like Salesforce, the HubSpot, we said Twitter before, Facebook, like there's a whole bunch of different, mostly cloud-based tools and things that can easily feed into or integrate with it as well.
Thank you, Sarah.
Lovely, fantastic. So I believe that answers your question, Sarah. Okay, so we just got another question come up. Let me assign to Connor as well.
Thanks, guys. I have a form set up. This is from Kim. Thanks, guys. I have a form set up. Do I use Power Automate to add organization emails so the approver can be assigned to a particular person, or is that done through forms? I'll let you answer that, Lucy.
You could do either. It would kind of depend on how your form was working. So if you are using it just internally, Power Automate has the ability to get a bit more information about the person that submitted that. So there's a wee step you can add in. I won't go into too many details, but that is getting additional information about that 365 user. So if you've got things like manager filled out already in your 365 system, you can get Power Automate doing all of that in the back end. Otherwise, as Conan pointed out, our quick and dirty way of doing it, because we are a slightly smaller team, is just to have those email addresses listed there as well, because it just makes it quick and easy. But yeah, short answer, both will do what you're after, and it just kind of depends. Yeah, it'll depend a wee bit on your organizational structure, which one will work better for you.
Cool. Kim, if there's any further questions to that, you can feel free to flick us an email and we can help.
Be happy to take a peek.
Richard has asked a question. So we have the need to upload attachments in forms, such as doctor certificate on a leave form. This question often gets answered, doesn't it? The process to attach those uploads to an approval seems pretty complicated. Is there a step or process that you know of?
Yeah, it has historically been a bit, don't want to use the word rubbish. It's been challenging. I believe last time we looked into it, which again would have probably been a year ago, they were working on making that work a bit better. There are a couple of workarounds you can do where, when someone submits that, it can get stored into a different place, but it is at the moment quite difficult to have that getting sent along with the approval as well. The workaround we have in place for our team at the moment is if they do something like an expense claim, they get sent a confirmation email after they've done the expense claim saying, hey, this is what you submitted. If you've got a receipt to attach, please reply to this email with that receipt. And that way, you know, the accounts team's already CC'd in there and things. So that's sort of how we get around the slightly tricky way that is currently in place to get set up. But I have hopes that they will be on the, you know, in the near future, making that a bit more simple.
Yes, Richard, it's not an ideal answer, and I think it's probably the most common thing requested, and I'm sure they'll get their act together and get that added.
Yeah, you would absolutely hope so.
Lovely, thank you very much. And we got another question that's asking which 365 licenses are required for Power Automate?
Thank you, Jean. Yeah, it's a good question. Basically, you can use Power Automate with any of the bundled licenses. So you just need Business Basic, E1 or above to have the full, well, pretty much the full, you know, Power Automate suite. Now, there are some limits on the number of like interactions or automates or flows you can have execute, but we haven't, I don't think we've run into any customers that have exceeded them, have we, Lucy? So you should basically determine that if you've got Business Basic or E1, which is free for not-for-profits for up to like 250 licenses, you can use Power Automate. So as far as we're concerned, every person in attendance should have no cost associated with utilizing this tool, which is great. Power BI is a different story, or other Power Automate things, Power Platform tools.
Excellent. Fantastic. All right, so I guess we got one last question. It's pretty for me, that one. So it's asking about the recording. All right, so all of you will be received a recording and the presentation slides in 1 to 2 business days. So don't worry about if you missed the first part or if you wish to share with your colleagues, feel free to do so.
Or slow it down because we talk too fast. Apologies for that. I think we've got one more slide, Lucy, which is just some of the more common questions that we might better rattle through quickly.
I am.
So yeah, a couple of these were asked. Probably what we'd say is, does it need 365? And probably what we meant by that when we asked that question is, do you need your email in 365, and do you need, you know, in SharePoint? You don't need SharePoint, but I think you probably need your email in 365 for this to work. But because I expect everyone here has that, then that works. Are we too small? I would say no organization is too small to use Power Automate because it is about improving your process. If you don't have any paper process, is this still valuable? We think that you'd be able to find something to use for this, even if you don't have any paper processes, but most of the audience did. And do I need to be a developer or techie to do this? No, you probably need a little bit of enthusiasm, like to be a little bit of a problem solver, be willing to be a little bit patient and tinker, a tiny bit of a tinkerer. But I think most people have that in them. So yeah, those are probably the only decent answers I have. And how do we get hold of the, sorry, go ahead.
You need to be curious is probably the main thing, and be willing to kind of spot what people are doing in your organization that could potentially be made a wee bit more efficient.
Yeah, that's going to be the more value thing, is the identification of what you could potentially put into the system is going to be more important than the building. Yeah, brilliant. I think that might be us. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending. And look, if you've got any questions, anything difficult, hit us up. We like the questions.
Lovely. Thank you again, Conor and Lucy. It's great. It's our pleasure to have you today. And I believe there's a lot of takeaway for all of us. So stay with us. We have more upcoming webinars on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I'll also send a link in the follow-up emails. If you're interested in similar topics, feel free to attend. All right, thank you all of you again. Thank you, Conor and Lucy. So we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Jane. Thanks, everyone.